Great to be here together with you and with everyone. Really happy that we could make the time to do this. It's always such a delight for me to talk about my favorite subject, which is emotions and our emotional life. And my aspiration this evening is to share some reflections and ideas as well as practices that will be useful in this moment and hopefully in many moments to come. One thing I really love about teaching around emotions, and especially using emotions as part of our spiritual path, is that they are extremely relevant. It's not like, oh yeah, I think, yeah, emotions, that sounds like it might have, some interest or relevance in my life. It's, throughout our day. I mean, interestingly, there's no research on how many emotions we have per day, but you can imagine if we have between 5,000 and 10,000 thoughts a day, we have probably at least half as many emotions. So much of our thoughts are around, right? What matters to us. Emotions are helping us guide our life through the opportunities and the challenges that are coming at any time. So our emotions are happening all day long, and yet amazingly, they are invisible. We can't show them to anyone. I mean, we can demonstrate them and express them through our voice and our face, but there's so much that we can only actually learn about emotion through research or through first-person introspection, becoming contemplative scientists of our own mind. And so we'll do a bit of that together. Yeah, I'll just say that I'm a contemplative social scientist, really fortunate to have been studying and working with emotions, I guess, the past 15 years, which gets a little weird when I think about how long it's been. And I've been most recently really figuring out how to translate the science of emotion into everyday practices that people can use and that matters to them. I'm a weekly teacher at a local Dharma collective here in San Francisco. So I am able to kind of share meditations and material that are relevant there on a weekly basis. And I get to be a lead teacher in the Cultivating Emotional Balance program that Che was talking about. And I've been teaching that these last 15 years, really blending in a source of wisdom drawn from primarily Tibetan Buddhism, but taught in a secular format, and the science of emotion, which is coming from a more contemporary and Western lens, and to see how these cannot kind of just mush together, but how they can actually really be interesting and useful for each of us. My aspiration also this evening is that we get some chance to share, to chat, to talk in whatever format works for you, and really appreciate the way Che opened the space for us. It's essential that everything that we're doing here tonight is practice. Not like when we close our eyes and meditate, we're practicing. It's all practice, meaning it is all about not harming, compassion, being really caring with how we are speaking to one another, how we're listening to one another. I think it would be almost impossible to have an hour and a half without any judgment, but is it possible to have the most minimal judgment we could have towards ourselves and others? That'd just be a beautiful way for us to really get the kind of honesty and openness and authenticity that will help for our practice. So did that mess you up? Did I put it in gallery view for you, Che, or it's okay? I was spotlighted. Okay, good, great. As long as it's good for the recording, I'd rather see folks who I can see. And for anyone who feels so inclined, seeing your face, so helpful. That's how I read facial expression and know what's going on for you all. And also, it's Friday night. Like, I bow down to you all being here. Nice work. So if you want to keep the camera off, no problem. But if you are so inclined, even for moments, it's great to see your face and get a sense of, yeah, how some of these ideas are landing. So I thought it would be helpful for us, since I know at least myself, probably some of you, it's been a week, right? Oh my gosh. So I thought we could do just a couple moments of grounding together, and then dive in a bit more to the content of emotion. And then I'll lead you in a practice I feel so grateful to have learned from a teacher named Soki Rinpoche that's called Handshake with Emotion. So we'll do that. And but for now, we'll just start with a little grounding practice. And it's funny because I actually teach in person more than online these days. I know for many folks, online is more common. So I'm like, I can't hear anybody. Is everything okay? But yeah, you guys are all muted. That's how it should be. Okay, got it. And it's nice to be cozy in our own homes. So I'm happy for you all for that, right? We're not all tucked in the center and kind of where I sit, we have all the chairs packed in pretty tight. So wherever you are, really find a sense of ease, whether you're sitting or lying down. And if it's comfortable, you can have your eyes closed or just softly focused in front of you. And let's really help our posture a bit by inhaling our shoulders up to our ears, and then exhaling our shoulders down our back, feeling the chest open. Twice more, inhaling the shoulders up. Exhale, release. And one more time, inhaling shoulders up. And exhale, release. And finding a place for the hands to be in the lap that really provides a sense of stability and contact. Connecting with a sense of vividness and uprightness, whether lying down or sitting. We want to bring a dignity to our practice. It's, of course, wonderful to feel ease and relaxation, but meditation offers so much more. This opportunity for that vividness, that clarity. And so we find the uprightness either of the spine that is sitting, or even in the posture, sense of uprightness and vividness if we're lying down. And soften through the eyes and soften around the eyes. And soften through the chest and the belly. And so feeling the beauty of this posture, strong and upright through the back, soft, open, and receptive through the front. And we could feel or imagine that behind us there is strength. If we're connected to people in our life who support us, or people who came before us who support us. Just that sense of support from the back. And with the support comes a stability in the posture and the body, stable like the mountain. And amazingly, we can be stable and still like a mountain, and yet really sense and feel the movement, the softness throughout the body. Almost more like that river quality, feeling and imagining that through the front of the body. And of course, there's thoughts and memories and images. They are arising, sometimes carrying us away with them. And so one more part of our posture, our settling our body, speech, and mind in their natural states is this conscious letting go. Right now, we don't need to preference those thoughts and memories and images. We can fully allow ourselves to inhabit the body, mind, the heart. And those thoughts can just gently move by, fall a bit to the background. And so consider taking what might be your very first intentional breath of the day, saturating the body with awareness and attention. Feel the whole body breathing in, and feel the whole body breathing out. Feeling the space of the room around us, maybe others in the room around us. Feeling a sense of the sky above us. For some of us, that's a darkened night sky. For some of us, a rainy sky. For others, it's daylight and clouds. Just really giving ourselves that sense, being held not only in this room, but also all around us in the environment. And take a moment here and connect to the sensations in the body. Maybe you notice tiredness, as some folks said earlier, maybe excitement or invigoration. And what is that like? Does it feel like tingling? Does it feel like heaviness? Notice the sensations specifically in the body. I'll ask a simple inquiry question, which is there any emotion in the body right now? And just notice what arises. Maybe thoughts or images, maybe areas of sensation that become more understandable and present with us. And feel and imagine that there's enough space and care in the body for whatever we're feeling. Feeling the feet on the ground, hands in the lap. And let's take 3 more breaths together to round out this initial settling in. Lengthening through the inhale, holding at the very top, lengthening through the exhale, holding for a moment at the bottom. And twice more, lengthening both inhale and exhale. Gently wiggling fingers and toes. And if eyes have been closed, blinking them open into our shared space. Welcome back. Welcome again. So I'm curious for folks who I can see or for folks who want to share on chat, did anybody notice emotion in the body? Did anybody feel like, oh yeah, I could connect to some sense of emotion in the body? Yeah, thank you. What emotion in the body? Did anybody have words for that? For me, I did feel some deep sorrow here, some transitions in my life in which I was like, oh, hey, sorrow, you're here. Okay. Anybody else feel that? Oh, wow, there's an emotion that's here. I can really sense and feel. Excitement and tingling. Yeah, there's such an array. So many different things we can feel in the body. Sadness. Yeah. Nice. I don't know if it's Shani or Shani, but great noticing. Excitement that we just thought was worry, right? It's actually really kind of hard to tell. Am I worried or am I excited? Yeah, beautiful. Peaceful. Heaviness and pain. Thank you, Christian, for sharing that. Yeah, yeah. And, so often we're just moving through the world, whatever it is, like a couple feet above our body, right? We're not actually experiencing what's happening, nor do we necessarily have the language. And that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the language this evening. It's quite interesting. Some of the research, especially that has been done around the language we have for emotions, it points to some interesting and important areas for us to investigate. I think it's important to just recognize that contemporary psychological research has some really interesting insights, but it's also, unfortunately, can have a real narrowing effect. I'd say at least 75% of the studies, especially the ones I looked at for tonight, they are done on undergraduate university students. Not very diverse, not very representative, right? So these are not conclusive findings that necessarily relate to everybody at every life phase, but they are invitations to reflect on our own experience. So the kind of classic saying of the Buddha, come see for yourself. And one thing I love about teaching around emotions is there is currently no mechanism of assessment for emotions that's better than you. So we can have a, functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner and do the neuroscience of your emotions and your amygdala. We can look at your galvanic skin response, kind of like heat in your face when you're making expression. We put a strap here on your chest and on your finger and get the heart rate variability. And that will give us some signal, like something's happening. But it won't be able to tell you why. Like, what's that based on? Where is it coming from? It will definitely not be able to tell you what you're going to do as a result of it. And even with the fMRI, or the kind of gold standard in neuroscience, the way that the functional magnetic resonance imaging works means that it's actually slower than the rapidity of our emotions. Our emotions are triggered in a 25th of a second. They last generally 30 to 90 seconds. So it's really fast. What is perpetuating or extending our emotions is continuing to think about them, kind of re-energize them over and over. And when we start learning and developing emotion awareness, one of the things we start learning and developing is how to recognize the signals of emotion in the body, do that in the moment. But also, we start really getting curious through reflection, like what's contributing to this emotion? What is this, right? And it's just really, I find, super empowering that the most we can learn about our emotions is what we can learn by self-reflection and learning our own experience. And I have had, I don't know how many conversations with folks who they would so love if we could just measure a signal and tell you how you were feeling. And I'm not saying we're not getting close, but it's still not going to be able to tell you why. So let's say my watch, it went off and it said, Eve, you're frustrated. I mean, all right, maybe that's helpful, but it won't be able to tell me why, right? Like, I'm frustrated because of what? What's the context? What's the circumstance? Maybe I'm frustrated because there's like a pop-up ad coming on my computer. Maybe I'm frustrated because I'm thinking about what I didn't say yesterday that I should have said. Wish I would have said. Maybe I'm just frustrated because I'm hungry. That happened to me earlier. I was on a call and it went over and I was hungry and I was like, are you kidding me? I need to eat, right? So there's so many different ways or reasons why we become emotional. And it's luckily our job to do so. So one thing that's really, one of the first things that got me really interested in the language of emotion is a scientist, maybe some of you might know the name Pennebaker, James Pennebaker. He has been studying words, language, journaling for, I think, almost 45 years. He's been around a long time. And in Pennebaker's research, he has looked at not only the benefits of journaling. So if you've ever heard about the benefits of journaling, for sure, it's based somewhere in Pennebaker's research. He's found that expressive writing after difficult, even traumatic experiences can really help shift and change our narrative understanding of our experience, helping us release difficult emotions. I mean, his main protocol is quite extensive. You write for 45 minutes about a difficult experience for 6 weeks, right? That's a lot. And then he got really curious, like, well, what is actually changing? So he started looking at the words that people use. How do people describe this difficult experience? How are they, unpacking it? And recognize that there are certain words that reflect healing. And some of those are unexpected. It's not just words like, compassion, care, kindness, instead of fear, anger, despair, right? Because you can still have fear, anger, despair, and definitely be healing. He found that one of the main things in the way that the words change is the use of the pronouns. So instead of I, me, and mine, us, ours, we. And you can imagine being like, writing of, I can't believe this happened to me. This was so hard for me too. We all go through difficulties. This is hard and no one told people to do this. This wasn't like through the journaling prompt, you need to start writing in a different way. It's a natural part of our healing. And I just find that to be so interesting that the words we use to describe our experiences can so profoundly shift our process of healing. There's been other research recently, I love this, that if you're in a partnership and you use I, me, mine more often as opposed to ours, us, we, you likely have a less quality relationship. I'm not sure if it goes inverse. I don't know if you start using those words, if your relationship gets better. I don't know. But definitely what they found was for folks who use those words more, that kind of collective sense, right? Because so much of our suffering is feeling we are separate, alone, different, not like others, right? So I think it's quite beautiful to think about that, not just in how we think, but in how we speak and express. And other research looking again at those words and how we use words, people who are more empathic are also using us, we, ours in their everyday speech. And I often think about just the power of speaking and then the power of writing. I did an extensive literature review recently, trying to find and highlight, the real differences. And I have to say, the literature doesn't back me up quite. There's not a huge difference, or it can be for learning, how we speak when we learn, and then how we write and how we learn. Definitely there are important differences, meaning we learn in a different way as we speak as when we write, and both are valuable. But I find that when I am speaking my experience, storytelling in a way, such an ancient practice of healing, that there's something quite different. And both are really important. Language and how we speak is at its most basic function, like really helps us build social connection and relationship, helps us understand one another. And what's interesting is for researchers, it gets really tricky. If we want to learn about how someone is feeling, about their emotions, we ask them, right? We ask them, what are you feeling? And maybe I say, oh, I'm feeling frustrated. And maybe Che says, I'm feeling frustrated, but maybe like frustrated is a different feeling for Che and I. That's actually okay. It's a little bit troublesome for researchers who want to have like everything, understandably the same, because whenever I feel frustrated, I call it frustrating. And, whatever Che is calling frustrated is also frustrated. So I think it's important to recognize that the whole words we have for emotion, apparently most of us have, I guess, like 100,000 words in our vocabulary. Quite a lot. Don't know how many we use every day. But when we think about the words that we use for emotion, I think some of us have our go-tos, right? How are you? Busy, bored, tired, okay, fine. Most of us don't have like a huge repertoire. There was a study I saw I loved of actually analyzing people's well-being by their use of emojis. And you could actually assess and understand in the same way that you could assess and understand from their written words. There's a lot that we are expressing about our emotional state through our words, through our emojis, and also through our vocal tone. And whether or not the words mean the same thing as it does to another, it's close enough, right? It's close enough with these words. One other kind of interesting piece I find about emotions and emotion words is there's a lot of research just looking at how we get kind of caught up or how we get sticky sometimes with certain words. So if you have a emotion word just written, like something like rage or joy or despair, at a cognitive level, we actually, our attention will go there and stay there longer than if the word was popcorn, bubble gum, kitty cat, maybe kitty cat for the cat lovers in the room. That's gonna might stick there a bit longer. But when we are tracking and looking at how people are focusing on different words, how long they're focusing on different words, those emotion words, you can really learn about someone's threat reactivity, about how kind of easily aroused or stressed someone is by how much when they're looking at the words on the screen, they get stuck. So these words, they carry a lot of meaning for us, even just seeing them, as well as images. All of us are making choices every day about what media we take in and don't take in. And I don't need to tell you that images carry a lot of emotion, right? We can kind of invite in a lot of different feelings just through what we are doing on a day-to-day basis with the images that we see. Now, one thing I find really encouraging about, working with our emotions and why we should learn more about them is that it's actually a differentiation, our ability to recognize different states of emotion that's very helpful over time. So if I'm able to recognize the difference between feeling anxious and feeling frustrated, it actually really can help me manage and regulate that emotion. Just our ability to, be able to be specific and clear. So there's been quite a lot of research looking at daily diaries. So people writing every single day about how they feel, what emotions they feel. And those who have kind of more vocabulary, more words, really, instead of today was okay, today was fine. But saying, yeah, I was anxious and I was frustrated, and I felt sad and da da da. That those individuals are also able to regulate their emotions better, to work with them. I mean, it's kind of makes sense. How could you know how to regulate it if you aren't aware you're feeling it? But it's just really interesting that developing this vocabulary really is so important. There's another term that's sometimes described in addition to differentiation, and I love this term, emotion granularity. Like how specific can we get in naming our emotion? If you think about it, like how many pixels are in the photo? Like when we can get really specific and really detailed. So instead of my morning was, hard, really saying, again, I was frustrated, and then I felt anxious, and then I felt sad, really getting specific and granular about what emotions we feel helps us regulate those emotions. And this research has been replicated many times with many different populations. And that granularity is helpful not only in terms of being able to regulate the emotion, but actually our behaviors. So this has been tested with people who are struggling with substance use or folks who struggle with expressive anger episodes. That naming, that identifying, that granular level really helps people work with their emotions. That's a very encouraging, right? I find that to be quite inspiring. And so then you've heard maybe this term that's kind of been popularized from that research, which is you name it to tame it. If you recognize the emotion, really giving it a name. And I like it as kind of, thinking about Rumi's guest house poem, inviting in all the difficult feelings. And when your like guest would come, you would say their name, like, welcome, welcome, nice to see you. Right. So that kind of naming in a way, maybe there's a bit of a welcoming. And something that's really important to know about emotions is there are no bad emotions. There's no, I really dislike the term negative emotion. There are emotions that are hard to feel. Like, I'm not going to lie, I would take excitement over anxiety any day, right? And yet, it's not in the emotion we feel that is harmful or difficult, it's how we respond. And there's always an opportunity to respond to an emotion in a way that's really supportive and helpful. We look at actually the way that many social justice movements get started. It's not because you were happy, right? There's frustration, there's anxiety, there's despair. So we can enact an emotion in a way that's extremely powerful and important. And we can enact an emotion in a way that's harmful and destructive. But we're really giving ourselves an opportunity, or kind of like a wide berth of emotions. Like, which emotions do we feel, they can really matter? And to say, actually, all of them matter. They're all important. Emotions from an evolutionary perspective arose because they help us efficiently respond to the world faster than we can think, which gets us in a lot of trouble, right? We respond to an emotion faster than a thought. So it's outside of our conscious awareness. And this is what's so interesting. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when talking about meditation, the breath, and emotion, one thing he shared is, maybe one of the reasons meditation helps with this regulation of emotion. Because you look at every mindfulness study, all of them have been published. I'd say at least half of them talk about it improves emotion regulation. Meditating improves emotion regulation, helps you work with your emotion, helps you respond in those ways that are helpful and less, of that kind of destructive or regrettable ways. And he says, maybe it's because emotions, they operate in that outside of our conscious awareness so quickly, just like breath operates outside of our conscious awareness. And so when we're starting to bring attention and fine grain awareness to our breath, something that we don't ever need to think about, luckily, that might also help us bring attention and awareness to emotions, which we never really think about until we're, really in the grip of the emotion. So it's a very interesting process, this developing of emotion awareness. It goes against, in some ways, what we're kind of naturally inclined towards, which is just feeling and reacting. And not all those reactions are big. Many of us, when we feel anxiety, we don't show it. We're just like internally with it. Maybe we're ruminating, maybe we're trying to suppress it, maybe we're distracting ourselves by buying stuff online, or whatever, right? There's all these different ways that emotions are arising that might not be visible to anyone except for us. And so as we develop awareness, we really have to be kind of skillful and clear on what our emotions are. So I've been talking so far really about the kind of contemporary, modern, scientific view of emotion. In the contemplative point of view, from many Buddhist teachers, emotions are also extremely relevant, extremely relevant. So some of you may have heard the term klesha. This is a term that is used to describe difficult or disturbing emotions, sometimes defiling emotions. It's translated as, you'll hear Pema Chodron and Khandra Jetsun Rinpoche, these two wonderful women teachers in the Tibetan tradition who, I've spent a lot of time writing about emotions. And one of the things Pema Chodron especially really likes to highlight is it's important for us to see that we kind of like our difficult emotions. Some of us like, for example, feeling a little angry. It's like powerful, especially if the alternative is like feeling sad, Some of us also like this emotion that's called contempt, right? Contempt is a feeling of superiority over others. So it's kind of the emotion I think most people feel when they use social media, right? And they're judging other people. And it's like usually the way we enact it, it's not that wholesome. We like it. It feels good, gossiping, talking. So it's like really, we have to get on to ourselves about what emotions are we energizing and what is the impact of that, right? That's very important. And that's where, again, the contemplative science and contemporary science really go dovetail with each other. And that granularity, being able to identify and label and name, can help us see where we're energizing these habits and patterns of emotion. There's a term in the Buddhist psychology around emotion, kind of storehouse consciousness. And in contemporary psychology, that might be called your database or your internal working model, or your stories. One thing that it's so important to see about an emotion is it's not just what's happening to us, it's what we're projecting onto that experience. And this is kind of obvious, but we miss it so often. And it creates so much extra suffering. So to really appreciate, dependent origination, I'm just going to go there for a minute, right? That everything that is arising through all of our senses, we are immediately projecting upon it. So whether I heard like a loud sound outside and I was like, why are the neighbors doing that again? Right? Something arises, I have a judgment immediately upon it. Maybe it elicits an emotion, right? Maybe it's a judgment. Or I hear the sound out here because I exiled the kitties tonight because they've been like sleeping on the computer, and like, though they're cute, it's not what we're doing. And I think like, oh, I wish they were here with me, right? Like, so like immediately a sound arises. And the same thing is true interactions with other people, right? We see other people and immediately, we see them shake their head or nod, and we impose a story from our own past history, our lived experience up until this moment. And we know that that's how bias exists, that's how prejudice exists, right? We have this storehouse consciousness, this database, this history. So much of the goal in Buddhist practice is to see reality as it is, free from projection, free from delusion. And it's very hard to do because our emotions occur outside of our conscious awareness before we have time to think. And so we have to really start getting clear and learn and understand what is the nature of these projections? What are the beliefs behind them? One really common one that people come up against, I meet a lot of people who are interested in working with their anger. Because when you're an anxious person, again, you can hide it pretty well, maybe you're even really successful, but anxiety makes you productive. I'm one of those people. But when you're angry and you're expressing your anger, you get a lot of feedback, right? Folks are like, you can't act like that. That's not okay. And understandable, right? Expressed anger can be quite harmful. And when people want to work with their anger, often they need to look at like, what's the underlying story that's feeding that anger? What are the past experiences that have contributed to that? And so our emotions are not just in the moment. They are, as one researcher beautifully described, Richard Lazarus, emotions are the wisdom of the ages. They represent all our cumulative ancestral, maybe recent family, and then our own lived history up until this moment, right? I'm always meeting, a thought, a person, an event, all of our sensory experiences. And that's why meditation practice is so beneficial in trying to develop that sense of pure experiencing of our emotion. Can we experience emotion as a mere feeling wave, right? Rising and falling, without all that story, with all that projection, really making space for and allowing. There's just so much of this kind of, extra layer onto our emotion that really gets us in trouble. It's really tricky, but there is a belief that if we can make enough space for our emotion as it arises, right? If we feel that anger, that despair, instead of thinking about it and kind of energizing it, if we just let it arise as the feeling wave, that it will naturally self-liberate. I gotta tell you, first time I heard that, I was like, that does not happen to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Naturally self-liberate? No. I gotta think about it. I gotta do something. I gotta go to therapy. Like, that's not gonna happen. And it is really interesting to explore, the feeling wave and letting it rise and fall, making it have, allowing it to have all the space it needs. It's such a beautiful, generous way of meeting reality, right? Shantideva, this 8th century Indian teacher who wrote the beautiful text, The Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. And probably one of the most famous lines from that is, it's impossible to cover the world in leather and, make it easy for us to walk upon all these spiky, pointy things. And I think about that as it's impossible to cover the world so that we wouldn't get triggered by something emotionally, right? It says, but what you can do is wrap your feet in leather. And that was his analogy for like cultivating and training the mind and heart. So I can't go out there in the world and make it a place free from things that will make me upset, but I can like kind of wrap this mind in compassion and care and clear seeing so that I can meet all the emotional experiences in a way that's more skillful. Aspirational for sure, right? I would like to say after 15 years that like I just got it. Like every time I get emotional, I just have my mind wrapped in the lotus leaves here and we're good. And it's not true. Not true. It's hard. It's hard work. But it is really cool to have a clear seeing of what emotions are and where they come from and how we can learn to work with them. So I would love your questions and reflections, but I think first, let's do a little practice together. Let's try it out. So this is a practice that's called the handshake with emotion. And yeah, Sokni Rinpoche, consider him a heart teacher, really appreciate his instructions in this practice. And just to give a little bit about him, he was born in exile in Nepal. His father is Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, who some of you may know, a great Tibetan master. And his sons are Sokni Rinpoche, Mingyur Rinpoche, and Chokyi Nyima Rinpoche. It's like amazing superstar family of beautiful teachers. They've written a collective, who knows how many books. And especially Sokni and his brothers, they've really spent a lot of time in kind of outside of the traditional confines of maybe the monastery and with a lot of the modern neuroses of our time, right? It's just what we are all experiencing in this busy and full life. And one thing that Sokni Rinpoche noticed is he wanted to offer people these practices of, sustained attention, compassion, of Dzogchen, of, this more non-dual practice. But people were so tense emotionally, so caught up in the feelings that they couldn't even move on to practice. Like it was like so much in their body, all this like anxiety and worry and whatever. So he created this practice, which is kind of a somatic meeting of a sensation of emotion in the body. And so we did a little kind of sneak preview during our first session. And the whole purpose of the practice is to continue to drop in the body and remember and feel emotion. I am going to invite us to bring to mind a recent episode of an emotion. That's an easier way to do it. And it's really important in the context of our time together. We're not in person with you all. I can't see you all. That you choose an emotion that's, juicy, but not huge, right? So not like your biggest worry that's going on right now. More like, I'm feeling disconnected from my friend. She's not showing up anymore. Ever since she started dating this person, I haven't heard from them. Like something that's like kind of on your mind, but not a huge thing, right? Because for some folks, when they connect with, a memory about an emotion, it's so alive. That's what's so interesting about our emotions. It's not just what happens in the moment. It's exactly the same according to your body, including your brain and your nervous system, remembering an emotion to experiencing it. And it's so powerful to be able to use that in meditation practice. And, we're doing it all the time, right? When we're trying to type or do something else or walk around, we are reliving our lives and getting triggered all the time, right? That's happening. So how do we do that in this way of creating kind of loving and caring container? And then we just sit with it. We don't fix it. We don't change it. That's what Sokni said, the handshake. I'm not trying to change this. I'm not trying to, suffocate it with compassion too quickly. I'm just making space, just being open with. How's that sound? Do like maybe 15-minute practice or so? Okay. So find a good posture where you can kind of feel, if you want to roll the shoulders, I always find that so helpful to just give myself some space. You can even roll a little in the neck. Most of us hold so much tension in the shoulders and the neck. And find a comfortable posture with those two qualities again, that vividness and uprightness, that ease and relaxation. Feel the body supported by the ground beneath you. And find the breath. It's helpful for us in settling the body, speech, and mind to follow the breath in a more focused way. Maybe noticing the subtle sensations of breath traveling in through the nostrils and traveling out through the nostrils. It's okay if you get distracted, you feel dull or busy in the mind. Just a couple more moments, even if you can follow one single cycle of breath. It's as though you're doing a full meditation. Taking a moment here and considering an intention for this practice. An intention is like a guiding light, helps us remember what we are doing this for. And often it's infused with bodhicitta, this awakened heart that really wishes all beings to be free. We'll see if that feels true or if there's another intention. Being here together and cultivating heart and mind, and letting it really uplift your practice and motivation and engagement. And allow the intention to recede just back into the space of the mind. And bringing to the very front of the mind awareness of the body. Almost as though you were an explorer, investigating all the sensations throughout the body. What are the sensations all through the face and the 42 different muscle groups in the face? And what are the sensations around the shoulders and chest? And just freely roaming throughout the body. Noticing and attending to sensations as they arise. And for folks who already shared earlier in the chat that there was an emotion already here, maybe a sadness or excitement, you can work with that emotion, meaning bringing your attention there and becoming very curious, granular with your specific feeling and being with these sensations. And to shake hands with your emotion is to really make space, allowing whatever sensations are there with the emotion to arise and be present, to unfold or dissipate in their own time. And if there isn't an emotion that's readily available or easy to sense in the body, I'm going to take a moment and bring to mind a recent episode, maybe a feeling of worry or frustration, maybe a sense of impatience, jealousy. Seeing if you can consider just one, whatever comes to mind easily, and again, not something too intense. And for just a moment, really vividly recall this memory. You may notice that with the recalling comes sensations throughout the body. If those are not pronounced, no problem. Just take a couple moments with the memory, not thinking about the memory, just holding it up, almost as though watching a short little film, replaying, and then releasing, letting that memory go, almost as though you were releasing a balloon and bringing all attention and awareness in the body. Keep noticing, keep dropping attention and awareness in the body. Noticing if we can sense this feeling wave of emotion, maybe as it's arising, maybe it's feeling of a blossoming almost. And maybe, again, without an agenda or expectation, maybe as it dissipates. Feeling and knowing the sensation from within the body, making as much space as needed. The feelings of emotion are strong and you want a break, open the eyes and put the hands on the belly and just breathe. If the feelings or sensations of emotion are subtle, no problem. Keep noticing subtleness in the body. you get distracted or carried away, no problem. Just relaxing, releasing, and returning, bringing full attention and awareness back into the body. Maybe the sensations of emotion have started to dissipate. If they're still hanging strong, no problem. We can investigate now and notice, in addition to the sensations of emotion, what else is here? As Sokni Rinpoche likes to call it, there is this essence of our love, this natural state of love that is part of our being, which is always already here. Could think of it like the sun that's there behind the clouds, or shining in a different part of the planet at night. And feel and imagine that sense of basic, simple, loving presence that we already are. Maybe feeling it like that sun as warmth at the heart. And to just know that this is our essential nature, our essence love. It means that whatever emotion arises and passes away is doing so in the context of and the spaciousness of this essence love. If it's hard to feel, you can just imagine that there is a sense of love here. Consider that possibility. And if it's easy to feel, just allow that warmth or radiance to be present. Simply being here with this body, which is a body of essence love. Being here with whatever feelings are also here in this body of essence love. And returning every time we get carried away. gently becoming aware of this body and the support of the ground beneath you. And feeling of the space around you, other beings who may be with you. Very gently wiggling fingers and toes. My eyes have been closed, blinking them open to our shared space. Thank you for your practice. Um, it's really interesting, this bridge of having the specific words that really can point out and identify our emotions. And then developing this kind of internal language for the sensations of our emotion in the body. It's really wonderful to have that connection to the inner feelings. And it is really funny to think about our thoughts that exist without words, or our sensations that exist without words, but are still in our awareness. And I think when we get into the practice of shaking hands with emotion, kind of get there by using our words, like, oh yeah, it feels achy or it feels tingly. And then we kind of slip into that nonverbal place where we can be with the body and feel it and experience at that first kind of more pure level of what's happening, moving, shifting, and changing. So thank you all for giving that a try. I would love to open up to questions or reflections, especially questions or reflections from that practice, or questions and reflections on emotion in general. It's very likely your question or reflection is also shared by someone else. And yeah, I think it's what I really love about emotions and teaching them is it's a universal experience. So hopefully something relatable all of us can learn from. Any questions or reflections? You can raise your hand, you can put them in the chat.
Okay, I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Zach. I'm with the crew here at the retreat center.
Okay, great.
And thanks for leading that. One thing I've noticed, I've done a version of this one before, and I feel like although I know that I was having a strong emotion at the time that the thing I'm thinking of happened, once I sit down to like shake its hand, it's like it seems to go away.
Yeah.
And so I've just noticed that has happened multiple times, and just curious about I mean, obviously there's a question of what's going on there, but there's also just anything to do to yeah, like I don't want to force it to shake my hand, but I'm also like I'm trying to practice this. So
Yeah, beautiful, great question. I think handshake is a really cool practice to do on the spot. Right. So if it is, appropriate for us to, close our eyes and take a moment. So I think about that. I ride a bicycle here in San Francisco, and, sometimes I don't like the way cars act, and I have some feelings, and I really like shake hands in the moment. I'm like, okay, what's here? What are those sensations? And that's one way, to start doing it on the spot. And then, one thing that's really powerful is, I mean, maybe needless to say, is music. And so if bringing it to mind as a memory isn't working as well, we can kind of help ourselves get that embodied emotion awareness by choosing a song that makes us feel, a certain way. Maybe it's kind of that nostalgia, that sadness, or that sweetness, or, so then we can practice again more in a meditative state, meaning it's more kind of contained, not out in the world, but still like notice the sensation. So I would recommend like listening to the song until it evokes and then turning it off and then sitting with that residue. I think that's a really powerful way too. Thanks for your question, Zach. Okay, from Shani, I just noticed my emotion of indignation started to dissipate in the practice you led. I kept grasping and trying to keep it, to remember it. Didn't want to let it go. Pretty interesting to watch. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and really good noticing. Really good noticing. Sometimes like Jetson Kondor Rinpoche says, like, we like our spicy emotions, right? And they kind of give us that energy. And yet their natural form is to come and go. It really is. And it's one thing to hear, like, oh, your emotion is just a feeling wave. It can come and go. And it's another thing to like actually observe and experience the emotion coming and going. It's very powerful. And then to notice grasping, amazing. No, I'm still mad, not ready, right? That's how we kind of perpetuate the emotion that really is only 30 to 90 seconds. So thank you so much for that reflection. Yes, our friends, our watching party. I see a hand up over there.
You too, Susie, you're on. Oh, okay. Hey, I just want to thank you so much for this amazing topic. I think it's so helpful, and we need it so much, and we don't talk about it enough.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, but I wanted to ask you, from an artist standpoint, I'm a performing artist, a singer, and a musician, and there's a great song by Iris DeMent called "Let the Mystery Be," and she was talking about not slicing and dicing so much about what we experience as human beings, so that we can just experience it organically and authentically in the moment. So we don't like, and I don't want to put a kibosh on awareness, or understanding, because that's really, really key. But I just thinking about the balance and the contrast of allowing something to just be like, maybe it's something we can just feel and not really understand in words and concepts. What do you think?
I love that question. I don't agree, but I love the premise of it.
Okay.
I do think like the great mystery is something we need more space for. Just period, right? Like there is so much that is mysterious, and we are not, I would be the last person trying to scientize everything, especially about consciousness. So much about consciousness is unknown in the mind, and to kind of, psychologize that into just feeling good or feeling bad, or the brain. I'm completely with you on that. There's so much mystery. However, I don't think that not having the language for our emotions is mysterious. It's just messy,
Yeah.
And if we can feel and like have a lot of like clean, like, oh, I just feel this frustration, I let it go. But if what's happening is like resentment and, anxiety, and it's like the origin or the etiology, like, why do we need this now? What's going on? I think that's an interesting question about the times we live in. And, there is something, like I was talking about the pronouns we use, the I, we, ours, or me, mine. And there is something so unbelievably individualistic about a lot of what's going on in contemporary times. And it creates this self-centeredness.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because being able to recognize and identify those emotions that are really like kind of reinforcing that, I think is important. And it's interesting to think that, you know, when you become a realized master in this lifetime, as I hope all of you become, Buddhas on becoming Buddhas, then these emotions are just gonna like not gonna be in the same way. It's not that we won't feel, but it'll be that smooth, like that, like silk on glass, like they will just happen. But until then, I think we need some of these scaffoldings. But I love your question. I've never had that question. So as someone who nonstop talks about emotion, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I saw another hand for a moment. But I did see here, JB, I had a deep sadness that surprised me the other day that was so heavy. Shaking its hand was ultimately very peaceful. That's so wonderful to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Sadness, especially, one of those emotions that many people try to not feel. And yet, when we turn towards it, that peace or even that sense of sweetness can really be there, which is so lovely. And then Gladys saying, I brought into my mind an event that triggered a lot of anger, and then another similar event this week emerged. Sitting with these two events gave me more clarity of the emotion behind the emotions. The seeing lent me a lot of more space, and I started to send metta and compassion to myself. Extra credit, Gladys. Nice work. Yeah, right. I mean, that anger, it's very often it's such a binary, like we are blaming someone else, like they are doing it wrong and what is wrong with them. And to be able to see clearly just, you know, the way that anger narrows and filters our perception can be a very good source of compassion, just like naturally, you know, just the clear seeing leading to compassion. Well, thank you for sharing that. And you know, anger is a very misunderstood emotion. Again, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who, you know, very fortunately was a big part of both the cultivating emotional balance work and making that happen, but also the Atlas of Emotion, which I should put into the chat at some point. It was a project he commissioned and that I got to work on of creating this vocabulary of emotion for people. And he was often confused about anger because in Buddhism, sometimes it's like, oh, anger is bad. Or there's a famous Lao Tzu saying that, you know, something like anger is a poison that burns the person holding it more than the person it's poured upon. And then in some text, you'll hear a moment of anger, it's kind of like obliterates lifetimes of karma. And you're like, okay, well, guess I really need to start banking up more merit. But really that mistranslation of anger is more intent to harm. Intent to harm. Anger, momentary anger, is extremely natural. And as I said before, it can have a very constructive way that we respond to it. And a lot of harm has been done by trying to have people not feel anger or trying to pretend you don't feel anger. And, you know, there's different cultural expectations and allowances of who's allowed to express anger, right? For some people, that's, you know, they're kind of entitled right. And for others, it is, you know, they shouldn't or not supposed to. So though all our emotions are natural and kind of shared as in part of our common humanity, the cultural display rules of what we've learned is okay or not okay to show can be quite different from our family of origin or from the country we live in. Yeah. Great
I
question.
just want to add to that because
Yeah.
the shame and I feel so wrong to feel anger probably is even worse, and just for a prolonged almost a day that made me even more unease. So yeah, that's the emotions after the emotion.
Yes, the secondary, right? And so our anger can create shame, right? And yeah, I mean, in work I did training in hospitals, there was such an amazing story of a woman who shared she got very angry with another doctor who was not willing to admit her patient, who was a pediatric patient. And she got very angry. You have to admit this patient. They really, they need this care. And the anger probably was, I don't know, a minute long. The patient was admitted, but she felt shame for 2 weeks. Oh my God, like, how could I express that? And, she was very oriented to the hierarchy. This was kind of her orientation in the world. And she was a junior and he was a senior kind of member. And it was really that moment of anger. And it's very hard to undo those kind of internalized expectations of how we should be. And it's hard to hold anger skillfully. Like if you spent your whole life suppressing it, it's like hard to not, like it's hard to know. And if you spent your whole life over expressing it, it takes a lot of practice. And I think handshake is a great place to practice. It's like a compassionate holding zone. Yeah. Thank you so much. Any other questions or reflection? The questions are so helpful to illuminate other sides of this topic.
I'll ask something kind of basic.
Sure.
What is happening when we hold or suppress or push down an emotion?
Very
I
good
mean,
question. Yeah. Not basic at all. So it is interesting. Like I find it very helpful to look at the research here. That when we are suppressing an emotion, there's kind of a couple different layers. We can kind of suppress in order to not feel it ourselves, total suppression. I don't want to feel that. There's the kind of more temporary suppression, which is I don't want anyone else to see it. Right.
mhm,
And then what we see is that when people are suppressing, trying to really hold it down either way, total suppression or otherwise, at
mhm,
the autonomic nervous system level, you're having a bigger response. So your
mm,
attempt to tamp down is having the
mhm,
exact opposite effect on the body. And so when
mm,
we think about something like stress, right?
mhm,
Stress is an over arousal of emotion. So often it's fear, right? Stress is being over, there's more demands than they have resources. I'm so stressed and the
mhm,
anxiety is really high. And then if you try to suppress it, it's even worse. And so the solution isn't to, express your
yeah,
emotions everywhere. It is to become aware of
mm,
and, kind of notice. And you might need to, like all of us need to occasionally suppress our emotions, right? Especially, I've worked a lot with healthcare providers. You can't always show how you're feeling. Like you can't be completely in the grief with someone else's grief if that's going to make it hard for you to do your job, or you can't show, fear or judgment. But there does need to be a time and space in which you are kind of attending to those emotions. And that could be journaling, that could be
mhm,
talking about it, that could be a handshake practice. But that
mhm,
energy of our emotion, that energy in the autonomic nervous system it does need a way to be what's sometimes called reappraised. So just saying like, it makes sense that I'm afraid right now. It makes sense that I'm angry.
mhm,
Not that like often we think what's going to help with our emotion is, I can't believe they did that. Why would they do that? And let me think about that. Like that's the kind of, re-triggering and rumination.
okay, mhm,
It is quite delicate how to be with our emotions without re-triggering and without
mm,
suppressing, which is really actually completely counterproductive. So great question.
mhm, mhm,
And then Jen and Susie asked, yeah, essence love. That is the phrase of Sokni Rinpoche. He is just amazing. I'm going to look for his handshake practice because it's powerful to share with you all. And know we only have a moment here, just a minute. Ooh. All right, trying to get. Actually, I've heard that there's no such thing as multitasking. It really is. You just do one thing well, and you just actually are. That's the only way. Okay, here's the Atlas of Emotion for anyone interested. And then the handshake practice. Yeah, Sokni is such a powerful teacher. Highly recommend checking him out if this felt at all interesting to you all. Putting him here. And Jay, do you all dedicate the merit at the end of your time together? Would you be okay if that's something I did for us?
Yeah, I'm happy to have you do that. I was just gonna wrap with some reminders and nudges, but please, yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, just taking a moment and really if it feels comfortable, hands here in a gesture of offering, but really remembering that we are coming here together for the purpose of hopefully, illuminating our own heart and mind. And if there is any benefit of our time here together, we offer that up so that all beings could feel and know their true essence love, that all beings could be safe and protected, and that all beings everywhere of all times could be free. Thank you so much.
Eve, thank you so much for leading tonight and giving us so many tangible offerings and practices to move through the emotions, to recognize them, to sit with them. I really enjoyed the handshake practice. I think that can be a really, really big tangible one, because one of the first steps is really being able to just sit with whatever's coming up and not be in resistance to it, not judge it, and just to really give yourself a moment as much as you would in meditation and taking in the breath, taking a moment to sit in and digest your emotions. So thank you for all of your offerings. And thank you everyone for your presence and your time here and sitting with us. And we will be sending an email out to you just to kind of thank you for your presence. These links that Eve has shared, I'll also be sure that we include those in the email for you. I'm also going to, we'll also include the link to the retreat that will be happening in April, if you are interested in diving into more of the emotional exploration and more of the emotional kind of clearing and healing that can be done, that Eve and Ryan will lead folks through here on the land. So thank you again, everyone. Please have a great, great night. Enjoy your weekend. Explore all of your emotions in every moment. And we look forward to seeing you again for other events and here on the land. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take great care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful.
Really enjoyed it. And now we're going to discuss further.
Okay, good. Keep the mystery alive, though. Don't discuss too
Thank
much.
you
so much.
Let's keep the mystery alive. That was funny.
Thank
That
you.
was good. That was good. Touche.
Thank you, Amen. Amen.
Keep the mystery alive. It's good. Good night.
Thank you so much. I have a question. Is this going to be, is the recording going to be shared?
We can share the recording. It was maybe for some folks if they were not able to attend, but if it's something that you would like access to, yeah, we can see about getting to you also.
That would be great, because I missed the most of it. I had something come up, but just the last few minutes were so rich, and I'd really love to see the whole talk if that's possible.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely get that to you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. Good night, everyone.
Nice to see you. Happy Friday. That was great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, 1 second.